Gather Tara Shakespeare, Kevin Maxson, Patty Smith, Brittany Rodas, and Lindsay Drew.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak. My name is Lillian Bunch. I'm not a candidate. I'm here for my best friend, Janelle Kayla Crosley, who is a candidate for the 199th district. And I just want to highlight briefly who she is and what her position, main issues are. She's an openly transgender woman, is believed to be the first openly transgender woman to run for elected state office in Pennsylvania. She wishes she were able to be here today, but she's working at Community Cares, a homeless shelter in Carlisle. She's an active community volunteer with service not only to Community Cares, but to Big Brothers and Big Sisters and Safe Harbor Citizens Committee. She also sits on the board of the Amani Festival in the Cumberland County Roundtable. She advocates for youth and adults with issues of gender identity, bullying, harassment, and discrimination. She addresses these issues both on her own and as the Southeast Central Pennsylvania representative for Trans Advocacy PA. She has 25 years experience in the healthcare field, and as a result, the most important goal she has for her district is improved nursing home care and staffing. Over 20% of her district are citizens who are over the age of 65, and therefore the issues of senior citizens and the disabled rank very high with her. Other matters of importance to her include measures of school funding, school safety, gun violence, climate change, improving the infrastructure, combating homelessness. Okay, that's it. My time is up. Thank you very much.
Okay. I think we have lost at least one candidate here, so we will have Tara Shakespeare, and we will have Patty Smith and Brittany Rodas, okay? All right. Same rules as applied earlier. We will have, this time the moderator will remember that there is a 2-minute introduction for each of you. And we will just go in order from left to right, so you can begin.
Is this, oh, it's not on. Melissa? Use the microphone. Hello. Thank you. Thank you to listen. Nope. Is it on?
Yeah.
Okay, wonderful. So my name is Tara Shakespeare. I am here today for a lot of reasons. My background includes growing up in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. I attended Bishop McDevitt High School, and then after that I started my career and dedicated myself to small business. I do finance and human resources at a small business and have done so for many, many years. So I come to politics from a very different background than a lot of people. I don't have a political science degree. I'm not a lawyer. I have not worked for the legislature for, my lifetime like my future opponent. What I am is a regular, hardworking person who cares about other people. Several years ago, I lost a very much wanted pregnancy, which was incredibly heartbreaking for me and my family and my husband. Late last year in 2019, my future opponent voted for the fetal remains bill in the House of Representatives. That would force women like me to undergo an unwanted surgery, to have added surprise medical billing that would come from said unwanted surgery, and would force women like me, and would have forced me, to have the added expense of fetal remains burial. And so there are several reasons why I'm running. That's a huge one. I believe that because our state legislature is made up of career politicians, they are not here for us. They are not speaking to the needs of the people in the 88th district, and I want to be that voice. I want to stand up for women like me, women who are suffering, regular people who are suffering and don't have health care, and it's time that we have a change. Thank you all for being here. Thank you for having me. Thank you to PA Stands Up and Capital Region Stands Up. This is a wonderful event, and I'm so excited to talk to all of you after.
Brittany?
Hi everybody, my name is Brittany Rodas and I'm running for the 105th Legislative District. First and foremost, I'm a mom. I have 2 beautiful young children, and I earned my Master's in Public Administration from Penn State University, where I studied public policy and public sector human resources. And I'm also a former staffer for the House, where I was responsible for drafting policy for the legislature. But I'm also the daughter of a veteran who died last year because he didn't have access to affordable health care. And I was raised the majority of my life by my single mother who often worked 2 jobs to provide for my family. I'm running for state representative because as a staffer, I sat across the table from a family who begged us to put a price cap on insulin, and we couldn't because Big Pharma lobbied against us. And I met with small business owners who told me they were struggling to stay afloat, competing with corporations like Walmart and Giant, yet our Republican-led legislature continued to expand opportunities at the expense of small business. And I met with 5th graders who told me that they were afraid that their school might be shot up, but we have done nothing in the face of gun violence. I'm running for state representative because in the absence of the willingness of our legislature to stand up and address the broken healthcare system or pay working families a dignified wage, I have a moral obligation to stand up. I'm not running because I think I have all the answers or because I'm special or have a lot of money. I'm running because I've learned in my experience that the stakes are far too high at the legislature to have representation that sees this position as an opportunity for themselves instead of an opportunity for a district. I'm a member of Moms Demand Action like Shayna. I'm a Dauphin County committee person. I served as a region director for Pennsylvania Young Democrats, and in addition to my master's degree at Penn State, I'm a graduate of the Eastern Leadership Academy at UPenn, and I have taken several courses in the National Conference of State Legislatures. I am ready to begin serving on day 1. I'm experienced, I understand the issues, and I'm excited to earn your vote. Thank you so much for having me here today and allowing me to be a part of this critical conversation and all of the issues that are impacting us every day. Thank you.
Patty?
Thank you. My name is Patty Smith, and I'm running for the State House in the 104th District against Sue Helm. Since I ran in 2018, a lot of things have stayed the same. We still live in the 5th most corrupt state in the country. And that is not just something I say willy-nilly, right? That's an actual statistic based on how many of our elected officials have gone to prison. Yeah, not good. You can still legally buy your very own politician here in Pennsylvania if you have the financial means to do so. Gerrymandering is still controlling our districts and who gets elected to our offices. And our prescription drug costs and health care are being controlled by the people who profit from it. Our public schools are massively underfunded. Charter schools are getting our tax money without any transparency or accountability. Our teachers are massively underpaid, even though they take care of our most precious resource every single day. And there are still few options past high school that are not college. We need to increase our trade education so that our businesses can also get the employees that they need. Our environment is on the brink of disaster because of our overdependence on fossil fuels. We're catching cancerous fish in the Susquehanna River, and Pennsylvania has been listed as having the worst air in the country. So because of all that doom and gloom, I'm going to give you a little sunshine. Because of all of our hard work in 2018, we put central Pennsylvania on the map. And now, because of us, people are paying attention. Oh, I'm out of time. People are paying attention to our races, and I want to thank you all for that.
Okay, we will have 2 questions for each of the candidates. Again, there will be 2-minute response times for each of the questions. We will then follow up with questions from the audience for all 3 of the candidates. And one more time, if you have any questions, please notify the volunteers here so that we can include them in the questions that we ask of the candidates. Why don't we begin with you, Patty, since you have the microphone right there. House Republicans introduced a package of bills called Energize Pennsylvania that provides tax breaks and subsidies to the petrochemical industry. Should Pennsylvania favor one energy source over another in its tax incentives?
Thank you. I am a firm believer that industries that are very successful and earning millions and millions of dollars do not need tax credits, do not need our hard-earned tax money. We should be investing in industries that help boost our environment, help clean up our environment, not ones that continue to damage it on an everyday basis. I do not believe that the gas industry needs our tax money. What I think the gas industry needs is a severance tax. They need to give some of that back to us so that we can start giving back to the communities that they're damaging every day.
Next question. The first bill amending the state's Human Relations Act.
Is this for Patty also?
Judge, they didn't answer the question, right?
Okay, we can do that. Okay. I'm willing to change. That's fine.
Could you repeat the question, please?
Okay.
Oh, did we not want to? I'm sorry.
We'll do that. House Republicans introduced a package of bills called Energize Pennsylvania that provided tax breaks and subsidies to the petrochemical industry. Should Pennsylvania favor one energy source over another in its tax incentives?
No. So I believe that we are facing a time where we have to weigh our economical impact with this industry and the climate change crisis. So I don't believe that we can accomplish anything without coming together and starting a conversation, but to introduce legislation and give additional tax breaks to industries that are thriving while we watch our green energy continue to stay flatlined. We're not investing in green energy. I believe that we should be taxing these gas industries and petrochemical plants instead of subsidizing, and instead we should be offering subsidies to green energy and alternative energy and advancing our alternative energy portfolio.
Tara?
And will you repeat it one more time, please?
House Republicans introduced a package of bills called Energize PA that provides tax breaks and subsidies to the petrochemical industry. Should Pennsylvania favor one energy source over another in its tax incentives?
So I believe that we should favor one industry over another, and it is not the petrochemical industry. There are so many alternative energy resources that we should be favoring. We need to invest in solar, we need to invest in things that provide us with clean air and clean water, and do not further add to climate change. This is one of those things where all of us up here, and I think a lot of people in this room, we knock doors. And when we go to a voter's home and we ask them what issues are important to them, they do not say that they really care about the petrochemical industry getting a tax break. They don't care about that because that's wrong. And the fact that our legislature is giving those tax breaks to the organizations and corporations that are polluting our environment and making us sick is insane. This is unacceptable, and we need a pro-environment legislature. So folks up here, the folks that were up here earlier, we need folks in our legislature who care and want us to have clean air and clean water and to not give tax breaks to corporations that are making us sick and polluting our environment.
Okay, I guess we will ask all the questions for all the candidates. So the next question, and why don't we go in the middle there? So the first bill amending the state's Human Relations Act, barring discrimination in housing, employment, and public accommodations based on gender identity and sexual orientation was introduced in 1976. Pennsylvania still does not have a law in the books that accomplishes this. What action would you support to ensure protection of our LGBTQ community?
So this is common sense to me, and it is absurd that we have seen the legislature stop these attempts before. So in 2018, the Pennsylvania Human Relations Commission released a new definition defining sex, which would cover the LGBT community against discrimination. So the common sense answer is we need to codify this, we need to put this in statute. So I will be a proud supporter of this. I'll introduce legislation whenever I can, but I think we need to go a step further, and we need to educate and inform and hold public hearings and get to the root of the problem here. This is not about everybody having equal rights. It's about homophobia and a lot deeper problems in public discourse around this. So I think that it's pretty common sense. We need to put this in statute, and I'm happy to do anything I can to support that.
Okay.
I would like to just ditto everything that Brittany said. I mean, we are at a point where gay folks couldn't get married not that long ago. We need legislation to protect everyone from discrimination. We have a crisis happening. The LGBTQ community is currently facing a higher suicide rate. We have folks in our trans community who are being murdered at a considerably higher rate. And this is coming from the top down because people are not protected. They're not protected under the law. And what that means is that the discrimination continues all the way down into our schools. So people are not being protected in schools and in their homes. We need to, under the law, acknowledge the humanity of all people. We are all deserving of equal rights, and we need those protections under the law. I very much would love to go to the legislature and push for that. And it is about homophobia, and it is about fear of the other, but we are all people, and we all deserve the same protections and the same equality.
Heidi?
I agree with everything that's been said. It's a shame that Pennsylvania is one of the only states in our region that does not have protections for our LGBT community. It's absolutely no reason for it, and it's shameful. We need to change that. Pennsylvania should not be a place where you can be fired for being gay or who are getting married over the weekend to a husband and then show up on work on Monday and get fired for it or thrown out of your house because of it. We need to stand up for all people, and all people in Pennsylvania need to have the same rights as everyone else. We need to protect our trans community, their right to self-identify, prevent them from being discriminated against at medical facilities and correctional facilities. And I think we need to start teaching diversity in our schools so that kids grow up to not see differences as something that you need to bully and make fun of, but something that should be embraced and recognized, because the differences that we have as individuals make us stronger as a group. And we need to start showing our children that that is the path to the future and not the path that we are currently taking in Pennsylvania.
Okay, next question, and we will go from Tara to Patty to Brittany on this one. Do you support the establishment of a severance tax on natural gas drilling? And if so, do you think the proceeds should be dedicated to a specific purpose?
I do support severance taxes on the drilling. There are a huge amount of profits that are coming out of Pennsylvania, and again, these folks are not paying their fair share. Sadly, the our current legislature receives a significant amount of PAC contributions from these folks. My future opponent, 15% of her contributions have come from the energy sector. And regular folks can't afford to buy a whole politician the way that the energy sector can. And that's what they've done. And because of that, they have helped ensure that those folks are not, those corporations, they're not folks, those corporations are not paying their fair share. I do not support necessarily tying the severance tax to a specific thing. I think that we need to put more money and more energy into our schools and our education system and our healthcare, but I do not support a reliance on a very specific tax on an energy sector that may not be there in 2050. Thank you.
Patty?
I have and always will be a proponent of taxing our shale drillers. We are, again, thank you Pennsylvania, the only state that does not do that. And the argument that says if we start taxing them for the gas that they pull out of the ground, they're just going to go somewhere else and we're going to lose that income. That is the most absurd thing I have ever heard. Doesn't make sense on any level, and I can't believe people are not embarrassed to say that out loud. I agree with Tara that while this tax may not be around for the long haul, I still think it would be wise to dedicate that money to our education system, because our kids are our future. I think that's a song. But when I was knocking doors, I had someone say to me, "Why is education so important to you? You don't have children." And I said, because my neighbor's kids and your kids are gonna grow up and run my world at some point. And I want them to be as educated and as prepared for their future as possible. So I think while we have the opportunity to bring in substantial amount of money from the gas drilling tax, I think we should be using that for education and creating a foundation for our children where they can grow up and do a much better job at running this world than we have.
Brittany?
I absolutely agree with taxing severance taxes. So I think this is a bigger issue though than just talking about a severance tax, because this issue has been driven by self-interest in our legislature. I believe that the severance tax can pass, especially now that our speaker is going to work for the industry instead of directing our legislature. So I've seen the pitfalls with this, and we talk about self-interest and motivation to be reelected, and a severance tax is a common sense area. This will fund our infrastructure, this will fund our schools, this money can be allocated to so many different areas. And with that, the second part of the question, I do believe that we should earmark this money for a specific purpose. I have seen in the legislature how we create new revenue without dedicating a specific source for that revenue, and money gets lost. It gets spent on things that not everybody necessarily agrees with. So I think if we are going to tax the Marcellus Shale and have a severance tax, we need to earmark at least a portion of that money to go back to green energy, which creates jobs. The severance tax has a lot to do with jobs too. They're afraid of driving jobs out of Pennsylvania, but we know, as George Scott said, we're the 5th largest producer of natural gas. So that's not going to happen. But if we can earmark money to reinvest into green jobs, then I think we should at least do a portion of that.
Okay, next question in the order here will be Patty, Brittany, and Tara. Should this state have stronger gun safety laws? If you agree, what would you do?
Thank you. I think guns are a tricky issue for Pennsylvania, because so many Pennsylvanians own guns. I do think that we need common sense laws, however, because we do have an issue with guns getting into the wrong hands. And that is something that we need to stop. We need to have universal background checks that are very thorough. And we also need to close the gun show loophole. So when I was running in 2018, I was routinely attacked for saying that. People would come at me and say there's no such thing as a gun show loophole. it's Democratic propaganda, you don't know what you're talking about. My husband and I, we do own guns, and we attended a gun show in Harrisburg last year. And as we were looking at some guns that were on display, the person who had the table came around, and the first thing they said to us was not "good morning, how are you doing, nice to see you." It was, "Hey, I don't have to run a background check. I'm not a dealer. It's perfectly legal in Pennsylvania." Folks, there's a gun show loophole, and we need to close it. Because if I'm there and being told that, you can bet your butt that people who should not have a gun know that it exists as well. So we need to close that. And I also think we need to address the issues that cause the gun violence. Poverty is a factor in gun violence. Mental health issues can be a factor in gun violence. And our children not having anything to do after school, parents working 2 jobs, not being home. We need to increase the minimum wage. I don't think there's an easy answer to gun violence because there's so many factors that make it up. So yes, I do support us looking into that and creating a solution that works for everybody.
As I said in my introduction, I am a member of Moms Demand Action, and I feel very strongly about safe gun measures. I believe in the Second Amendment. My family owns guns. I'm from a family that hunted, so by no means am I trying to take your guns. However, I believe that we should have safe storage laws. I have 2 young children, and it scares me to death to know that they can go to a friend's house and accidentally get hold of a weapon. 73 kids under the age of 12 in 2018 were killed by a gun in a home of a friend. So I think that the statistic is eye-opening, right? These are common sense gun solutions. So safe storage laws, I believe that we should ban ghost guns, which if you don't know what that is, it's where you can purchase a kit and essentially build your own gun. But the problem is that they don't have serial numbers. They're not able to be tracked. So while it doesn't necessarily reduce gun violence at that spot, it also allows offenders to go often without any kind of consequence because there's no way of tracking the gun. I also believe in closing the loophole, as Patty so eloquently said. This is an obvious problem. If you're advertising that you do not have to have a background check, then you probably shouldn't be selling that weapon. And in addition to that, I think that we need to protect using the Pennsylvania background check system in addition to using a federal background check system. And universal background checks, yeah, I mean, I can go on and on with this list about reasons why I think we need stricter gun laws. But I just want to reiterate, I am not about taking your guns. I don't care if you own guns. I just care that you are storing them safely and using them for proper purposes.
Sure.
I like this question because, like many of the questions here, it's framed from the point of view of the NRA. So the NRA buys whole politicians. The NRA drives this conversation, and they imply and they say and they outright insist that Democrats want to take their guns. And we don't. We have 3 people up here who either have guns in their home or they have family members who hunt. And I'm not going to allow the NRA to dictate this conversation. We need safe storage. We need universal background checks. The majority of Americans, the majority of Pennsylvanians agree with that. Our legislature works for us, or is supposed to work for us. And when the majority of Pennsylvanians agree on something, our legislature needs to responsibly reflect that. It's time that we vote in people who reflect the majority of our population and the majority of our folks. I think everybody up here and the folks that you heard talk earlier are on the same page with that. And the majority of Pennsylvanians are on the same page with that. And it's time that we vote folks in who reflect that.
Okay. For this next set of questions, it will be Brittany, Tara, and Patty. In 2019, the American Lung Association ranked the Harrisburg, York, Lebanon metropolitan area among the top 24 worst for year-round particle pollution. How would you address this problem?
So in 2018, despite federal rollbacks, Governor Wolf moved forward with a methane reduction strategy. and that involved permits, and it took a look at larger contributors to this problem other than just methane. So we're talking about VOCs and HAPs and NOx's. I know it's over your guys' heads, over my head too. So, but I think that the critical thing that we need to be doing is we need to be funding DEP and providing enough resources so that they are able to stay on top of the enforcement side of this. So DEP faces significant understaffing, and their enforcement's backed up significantly because of it. So I think an initial step, we need to fund DEP. We need to support Governor Wolf and our next governor in upholding those methane reduction strategies, and encourage all of our legislators to also get behind similar programs. And lastly, I think that we need to invest in green energy. We need to be expanding our alternative energy portfolio. We need to talk about solar energy and wind, instead of trying to revive industries that have continuously polluted our air without any consequence.
Again, another question that is dictated almost by the transportation and logistics industry. Those folks are some of the biggest drivers of air pollution and bad air quality in our area. Right now, 1 in 4 folks in our area is, 1 in 4 days in our area, folks are breathing in bad, low quality air. Again, our legislature doesn't seem to mind this, but regular folks do. When I go and knock on people's doors, they are not asking me if the polluters are getting tax breaks and if that's like their issue. They're telling me that they're concerned about the health of their 8-year-old child who has asthma. That is a legitimate concern for everyday Americans and everyday Pennsylvanians. And so we need a pro-environment legislature. We need folks in there who are not being bought by the corporations who are polluting our air and our water. And I hope that everybody up here agrees with that, and everybody in the audience agrees with that, because the majority of Pennsylvanians agree with that.
We're running a little bit over time here, so we're going to finish up with one question, and that is a very simple one. What are your 3 most important issues, and how would you deal with them? We're going to go Tara, Patty, Brittany.
Healthcare is insanely important to me. It's one of those issues that is, I think, on a lot of people's minds. We are currently talking about the coronavirus. And we have Pennsylvanians who either don't have health care at all or are underinsured. Surprise medical billing is a huge, huge problem in Pennsylvania, and that's something our legislature can absolutely do something about. The environment is very important to me. I like clean air, I like clean water. It's guaranteed to us by our Pennsylvania Constitution, and we deserve it. And another thing that's really important to me, and what I would like to do about it, is government transparency. Right now, our legislature is not always transparent with us. It's hard to find answers from them, it's hard to find their positions on things, and it's hard to find who's funding them. And I think that we need to talk about that and address some of those issues, because for everyday Americans, they do not have 6 hours to find out what their legislator voted on and why, and if they are taking PAC money from the industry that wanted the legislation put forward. And obviously, I think corporations should be paying their fair share. And that would go a long way towards improving equality in our systems.
Brittany?
So I think we have a global issue with climate change, and that has to be on top of our list, because if we don't address that problem, then we're probably not going to have time to address any of the other problems. So climate change, for starters. Nationally, I think we have a healthcare crisis. I mentioned in my introduction that my father passed away last year. The last year of his life, my sister and I were fighting with insurance companies and fighting with Medicare and fighting with Medicaid, to get the insurance that he needed, and it turned out he made just a couple dollars over the limit for Medicaid with his Social Security. And so when he had a heart attack last July, I felt like my dad's life to the Department of Health was not worth $7 every month. So I feel like we need to address this problem. I don't feel like we need to. We absolutely need to address this problem and get prescription drugs under control. and surprise billing, deal with their PBMs who have a large portion of control in pricing drugs and take a lot of kickbacks, and that drives the cost up. And then locally, we have so many local issues, but I think that the gerrymandering issue probably comes to the top of the list, because with our gerrymandered districts, we really are not giving voters a voice. We take away the ability of our electorate when we decide who gets to vote in what district to control the maps. So I think that that has to be something we address firsthand to really give the voice back to the voters.
Patty?
The three things that I see in my district are education, wages and jobs, and reform. So with our education, we need to step up and ensure that the state runs every single penny for our public education through the fair funding formula. The quality of your education should not depend on your zip code, and right now it does. And we've got to change that. Because as someone mentioned earlier, when your school district is not getting the funding they need from the state, they're going to reach out to you, the residents, and your school taxes are going to go up. Where I live in Susquehanna Township, our school district is underfunded by more than $1 million every year. We have some of the highest school taxes around. That is directly related, and that's something that we can do something about. We could solve two problems with one solution, and that's what we need to start doing in the State House. Like I said, a lot of these topics that you brought up today have multiple causes behind them. And when you solve one thing, you're solving a myriad of other things at the same time. We need legislators that can think outside of the box, that can sit down with the other side. Instead of pointing fingers, sit down and say, how can we solve this? The gun problem isn't getting solved because Democrats have a plan and Republicans have a plan, and they don't care about the other side. And that goes for almost all the other issues. It's partisan politics that are running our state, and we're not getting solutions because of it. We need to cut that out. We need to start being grown-ups. And we need to start electing officials who care more about their constituents than they do about ourselves.
Well, first of all, a thank you to these three very impressive candidates. I was really impressed with all of them. Some thank yous. First, to all the candidates who were here. Second, to all the volunteers for Capital Region Stand Up who worked so hard to put all this together. But mostly a thank you to all the people who were here in attendance, and particularly to those who hung in to the very end. I'm really impressed that you managed to do this. So, and thank you for attending. That wraps up today's session.
Yeah,